What?
No pretending, man. No game. Fuck
No.
you talking about? This that red keep for the little poop push. We out here on South Vegas Drive with it, doing what the fuck we want to do, how we want to do, living in that motherfucking track out.
A young rapper from Memphis sat down in front of a camera, iced out and smiling, barely 90 days home from a cell, and then he said out loud the one thing almost nobody staring down a murder charge would ever admit on video.
I went to jail for first-degree murder. Yeah, like, I don't know how I did, but I went to jail for first-degree murder.
Yeah, you innocent, basically.
Yeah, I'm innocent.
That is Bizzle, and the reason he is grinning through it is the part that flips this whole story on its head. Hear the loophole he swears set him loose.
It's hard, it's hard.
I actually beat my charge and everything. It's just, you know, they got double jeopardy down here, so they picked the charge back up. Actually still fighting the charge right now.
So he beat it, then they came right back and grabbed him again. And to understand how a man ends up charged twice for the same killing, you have to go back to a spring morning in 2020 when a man from Mississippi drove into Memphis to buy some weed and never made it back out. Police say that on May 17, 2020, a 30-year-old named Joseph Buckley III was shot several times and left behind a dumpster in South Memphis, his cash gone over a deal that was supposed to be simple. Hold that thought, because the man everybody points at for setting it up is the same man you just watched smiling about beating the case. To know how Prentice Bizzle became Bizzle, you have to know the corner he came up on. He grew up on Tate Street in South Memphis, and somewhere along the way he started calling his whole side of town South Vegas, a name he says he built himself after running back and forth to the real Las Vegas chasing money. Watch him explain where the name came from.
Where did the South Vegas come from?
You know, South Vegas came from me. Like, I was like really back and forth to Vegas and everything, getting to the money and all that, doing everything I needed to do. And when I came to Memphis, I was like, man, it's just a money spot all around Vegas. And
he turned that idea into music, into tracks like Run It Up and Lost Memphis, and into a small but real local following that treated South Vegas like a movement. Young dudes in the neighborhood ran with the name, put it on merch, tatted it on themselves, and treated Tate Street like the new center of the map. And Bake watched his own slang become the whole area's identity. He rapped like a man who believed his own hype, too, dropping lines about feeling like Tupac with the troops behind him. And for a minute, it looked like the music might carry him somewhere clean. But the hustle came long before the rapping, and by his own telling, it started when he was still a child. Hear him put a number on just how early.
I really been hustling probably since I was about really hustling probably about 11.
Even 9 showing dice.
Yeah, I was 9.
He says he learned the game from his father and his older brother, and that older brother is a whole story on his own. His name is Fontrell Antonio Baines, but the streets and the courts know him as Nuke Bizzle. And Nuke is the reason people online started calling this whole family one of the most reckless crime families in rap. Nuke didn't just commit a crime, he rapped about it on camera. He put out a music video literally called EDD, waving envelopes from the unemployment office, right after pulling one of the biggest pandemic fraud schemes the feds had seen out of a rapper. Watch the news break it down.
The rapper accused of stealing more than $1 million through unemployment fraud and bragging about it in a music video has agreed to take a plea deal. Memphis-based Nuke Bizzle, whose real name is Fontrell Baines, is facing a maximum sentence of 20 years in federal prison.
Nuke would eventually be sentenced to 77 months in federal prison, which is over 6 years, after filing around 92 fake claims that added up to more than $1.2 million, with over $700,000 actually paid out, and then getting caught during a traffic stop in Las Vegas with a stack of other people's debit cards, drugs, and a gun. The thing that sank him was not the police work, it was his own mouth, because he handed investigators a confession set to a beat and posted it for the world to watch. And Nuke was only one branch of the family tree. Their youngest sibling, known as Lil Squid, caught his own gun and attempted murder charges, and another brother, Prentice Cawthon, who raps as Cat Bizzle, would end up standing right next to Bake in the case we're here to talk about. 4 brothers, 4 different lanes, but the same street math running underneath all of it. And Bake has always been proud that each of them built a name on his own, rather than living off the next one's shine. In his telling, they were less a rap group and more a whole operation, so tight that he once joked he had enough brothers to be his own gang. Bake, for his part, always framed himself as the provider, the one keeping the lights on for something like 20 people who leaned on him, insisting his whole life was about money and never about violence. He liked to say, money is not everything, it just makes you comfortable, and comfort was the only thing he ever admitted to chasing. That framing matters because the man from Mississippi with $25,000 in a bag was about to find out exactly how a place built for making money fast can turn on you just as fast. Here is where a normal weed turn turns into a murder file. Police say Joseph Buckley III drove up from Newton, Mississippi to buy $25,000 worth of marijuana, and that the whole thing was arranged over text, straight with Bake Bizzle. According to the affidavit as it was reported, Bake sent him a pin, met him driving a red Dodge Challenger, waved him down on a side street, and then changed the plan on him, telling him the real spot was another address and that his little brother would walk him in. Before we go any further, it's worth stopping on the man who died, because he tends to get lost in the noise around the rappers. Joseph Buckley III was about 30 years old and came from Newton, Mississippi, a small town roughly 150 miles south of Memphis, and there's barely any public record of who he was beyond this one terrible day. No big obituary, no spread of photos, just a name in a police file and a family that quietly carried the loss. He drove all that way believing he was walking into a straight business trip, and the people waiting for him had already turned it into something else. That new address was 1577 Havana Street, and Buckley pulled up carrying the money in a Fendi bag, with 2 other people riding with him. Police say Cat Bizzle met the group and walked them around the side of the building back toward a big dumpster in the alley, and the second Buckley cleared that dumpster, the gunfire started from somewhere he never saw coming. He was hit several times and dropped right there in the back, and by the time officers rolled up, he was already gone, found unresponsive behind the dumpster with the Fendi bag and every dollar of that cash gone. The way police describe it in the affidavit, this was never a real deal at all. It was a robbery wearing the costume of one, a chain of events set in motion to take the money and leave the buyer face down. Everything before the trigger, the texts, the pin, the wave down, the address switch, reads like steps in a plan rather than a deal that simply went bad. And here's a detail the title tends to flatten out. Witnesses did not put the gun in Bake's hand. A witness later picked both brothers out of a 6-person photo lineup and laid out who did what. And in that account, it's Cawthon, Cat Bizzle, who is identified as the shooter, while Bake is the one accused of pulling Buckley into the trap by phone. That distinction is the whole ball game in a case like this, because Tennessee lets prosecutors charge the man who set the table just as hard as the man who pulled the trigger. Under the way these cases work, if someone dies during a robbery you helped plan, the law can hang that death on you, even if your finger never touched the gun. Which is why setting up the deal can be just as dangerous, legally, as being the shooter. So even in the version where Bake never fired a shot, the state can still try to put a first-degree murder on him. And that's exactly the road this case would eventually take.
Now think back to that interview. Because when he was asked flat out if he had spent his life in and out of jail, he pushed back on the idea that he is any kind of killer. Listen to how he draws the line for himself.
You been going to jail your whole life?
I ain't gonna just say my whole life. I ain't no really violent person or none of that. You know, I'm chasing my money.
Whether you buy that or not, the physical trail is what carried the case forward. Memphis police opened the investigation the moment they found Buckley's body, and from there they built the file piece by piece. Investigators leaned on the text messages between Buckley and Baines that arranged the whole deal, the pinned locations, the description of the red Challenger, and the witness who could name both brothers and lay out exactly what each of them did. That witness was the anchor of the case, the person who put Bake in the role of the man on the phone and Cat in the role of the man with the gun. When detectives questioned Bake, he even acknowledged that his brother went by the rap name Cat Bizzle, which quietly tied the two of them together inside the same setup the state was already building around them. But knowing who police blamed and being able to make it stick in court are two very different things, and this is exactly where the case stopped moving in a straight line. Because more than a year would pass before anybody got arrested, and even once they did, the charge that landed on Bake was not the one you would expect for a man accused of setting up a killing. Not at first, anyway, and that gap is what let him walk back out onto the same streets, free on bond, telling his side to a camera while a dead man's family kept waiting. The arrests finally came in September of 2021, when Baines and Cawthon were both charged with facilitation of first-degree murder in the middle of a robbery, each held on a $250,000 bond. Facilitation is a lighter charge than pulling the trigger, the kind of charge that says you helped the thing happen without being the shooter, and Bake sat in custody fighting it. Hear him count out his own history with the system, including that long stretch.
I probably went to jail probably like 7 times out of my whole life, and most of the time I used to go to jail and go on bond out. This time I had to sit like at least 14 months.
14 months in, he got out. Not because a jury cleared him, and not because the case was truly over, but because the charges came loose enough for him to be released while everything stayed technically open. In his own head, that meant he had won, and that is the version he told on camera when he said he beat the charge and then watched them pick it back up on some double jeopardy move. Here's the correction on that because it matters. Double jeopardy only protects you once a trial has actually started and a verdict has been reached. And since Baines never went to trial the first time, nothing legally stopped prosecutors from coming back. So when they returned, they were not breaking the rule he thinks they broke. And come back they did, harder than before. On May 8, 2024, Memphis police rearrested Baines and booked him on first-degree murder and aggravated burglary, a serious jump up from facilitation, with the department saying he had been their main suspect since the very beginning. The aggravated burglary count, from what the reporting shows, ties back to the way the Havana Street setup was staged. As of the latest public records, there is no trial verdict, no plea, and no sentence on the books, with the case sitting in the Shelby County courts, which is not unusual in a county where homicide cases routinely stall for years under a heavy backlog. The Shelby County system has been buried under so many felony cases that officials there have pushed ideas like night court just to work through the pileup. So a case sitting untried for years is closer to the norm than the exception. If he is convicted, first-degree murder in Tennessee can carry life. Now, if you think a rapper getting hemmed up over a robbery that turned into a killing is a one-off in Memphis, it is not, and that's the heavier truth under all of this. Take the case of a young Memphis rapper named Andre Scott, who goes by Boo Two Guns. In May of 2025, he was charged with first-degree murder in the middle of a robbery after a deadly shootout at a Frazier gas station, almost the exact same charging language that was first used on Bake.
Arrested a man connected to a deadly robbery turned shooting at a gas station on Range Line Road. Police say when they arrived to the shooting on May 18th, they found the man who was shot and was rushed to the hospital where he later died. That victim was later identified as Keishun Thomas. Now, witnesses say Thomas, along with rap nicknames Boo Two Guns and Trey Slime, came into the store to rob two men. 19-year-old Andre Scott was seen firing shots during an exchange of gunfire that killed Thomas.
The wild part is how they caught him, because police say his fingerprints were lifted off a case of Sprite he touched inside the store, and the gang unit recognized him and another rapper by their street names. His bond was set at $5 million, and like Bake, his case rolled toward a grand jury and then went quiet, still unresolved. The point of putting those two side by side is not that they're identical, because they're not. Buckley was the targeted buyer lured in from out of town, while the man who died in the Scott case was one of the alleged robbers himself. What ties them together is the pattern: young Memphis artists getting identified through their own rap fame, charged under Tennessee's strict felony murder rules, and left sitting in a slow court system with the rest of their lives hanging on the outcome. And it's the same pattern that swallowed Bake's own brother, Nuke, who couldn't resist bragging on camera about his crime. Watch how his own words became the evidence.
The Department of Justice says a rapper who bragged in a music video about getting rich from an unemployment scam is now facing federal charges. According to a criminal complaint, 31-year-old Fontrell Antonio Baines exploited the pandemic unemployment assistance provision of the Federal Coronavirus Act.
So that's where Bake Bizzle stands today. A man who told the world he was all the way innocent, who thinks a loophole saved him once, and who is now facing the most serious charge Tennessee can bring, while a family in Mississippi still has no answer for why their son drove north for a deal and came home in a box. He hasn't been convicted of anything, and the case still has to be fought in front of a jury that hasn't been picked. But whatever a jury eventually decides, the story keeps making the same quiet point about that city and that life. That the same hustle he learned at 9 years old, the one he swears was only ever about the money, is the exact thing that put a target on his back and a body behind a dumpster. Rest in peace to Joseph Buckley III.
If you know a young person out here who thinks the fast money has no bill attached to it, send them this one, because it might be the thing that makes them stop and think before the streets make the choice for them.
A hustler, bro.
Hustle, yeah. It's just like come with the hustle. So I probably went to jail probably like 7 times out of my whole life, and most of the time I used to go to jail and go on bun out. This time I had to sit like at least 14 months.
It's Bizzle. They like, hey, what's up with bait? He back home off that case. He must ran out of cake. Why you staring at my plate? Yeah, I heard this shit you said. Why you ain't say it to my face? Yeah, I'm standing on my tray. Nigga, stand on what you say.